4, we're going to talk briefly about writing instructions. You need to read Chapter 7 in your text. With this presentation and with your assignment, we're going to focus mostly on writing instructions, not illustrating or designing them. We will talk about design in another lesson. However, for your discussion for the first week, you may want to discuss design, so make sure you pay attention to the parts of the book that will talk about design. Also, for your assignment in the second week, I will be basing my grading on basic design such as white space, bullets, and numbering, and how well you use that to be effective with your instructions. You may or may not have thought about instructions, but you use them all the time in your personal, academic, and maybe even professional life. Just think, for example, about this class. Everything you do hinges on the written instructions I give you, since we can never meet face-to-face and have an actual conversation or discussion about what I need you to do. And let me tell you from experience, it's hard to write instructions. Have you ever tried to follow instructions that were poorly written or confusing? It makes for a very frustrating experience. I'm the first to admit that not every instruction I write is perfect, so you may have even experienced some of that frustration in this class. Instructions are important in a professional setting for convenience, safety, and efficiency. Often we must follow instructions to the letter to be safe or to do a task in the shortest and easiest way. In order for instructions to be useful, they must be accurate, consistent, thorough, and perhaps most importantly, clearly written. Writing instructions will not only test your writing skills, but your critical thinking skills as well. You have to be able to think through a task in order to be able to write about it. If you don't think critically enough about a task, there's no way you'll be able to tell someone else how to do it. Now, obviously, there are plenty of different kinds of instructions. There are instructions that have absolutely no words at all. If you've ever put together a Lego set or something from IKEA, you know how these instructions work. There are instructions that have visuals that aid the task, and then there are instructions that are completely word-driven. To talk about some examples, turn to pages 269, 270, and 271 of your text, and there are some good examples of different kinds of instructions. What you know about each one of these instruction documents is that not one of them is written in paragraph format. Here's an example of an instruction document that has absolutely no words. There are no pictures at all, but it's hard to even figure out what the instructions are for. You probably would have benefited from some words. Next is the other end of the spectrum. There's some words and there's some pictures, but it's hard to tell what the pictures are and how it relates to the words. There's a little bit of everything wrong with it. It's crowded, the visuals aren't effective, and it's hard to follow. Lastly, we have an example that has too many words that shows the picture. The problem with the instructions, are way too wordy. They're in paragraph format. You don't know exactly how the instructions relate to the picture. You even see on there, if you can read the small print, attach 8 springs not shown evenly between the 8 attached springs. So they don't even show you all the things that you need to see. So if these are all bad instructions, how do you write good instructions? Writing good instructions isn't that different than writing good business documents. The first thing you need to do is plan out what you need to tell the audience. What are the steps a reader needs to take to complete the task? Make sure you have a good understanding of the task you're writing about before you even start writing the instructions. While you are planning, make sure you know all of the tools or materials the reader needs to do the task, as well as any potential safety problems or risks that the task includes. Once you know what you're writing about, try to do the tasks with the instructions you came up with. If it doesn't work or if you've left something out, go back and add those elements in. After you're relatively certain that you have all the details down, then you can write the instructions. After writing, make sure you test again by doing the task according to your instructions. Pretend it's like the first time you've ever done what you're doing and you have no previous knowledge of it. If you still have problems, you can revise your instructions as necessary and edit them if you need to. When writing instructions, like with all business writing, make sure you write for an international audience. The details are on page 271 to 272. Also, make sure you use a style appropriate to instruction writing. Unlike other business documents, instructions should be in the present tense. So rather than saying, you should have pressed the button, say, press the button. Everything should be written as a command. Unlike in letter writing, it's perfectly acceptable to command someone to do something if it's for an instruction. And also vary your verbs as well. Don't use the same verbs throughout the whole document if other words would do a better job. A list of good verbs is on page 275. Lastly, number or bullet your steps if you're presenting them in a list. Try to keep the bullet points short and concise and separate them with white space or other visual cues. If you do use visuals in a document, make sure they're clear, useful, and well labeled. There are some distinct parts of instructions. The first is the introduction. It gives background to understand why and how your instructions work. The second is the list of equipment and materials, all the things you'll need to complete the task. Next, you have the steps, how to do what you're doing. This is the heart of the instruction document. Next, there are warnings, cautions, and notes, any potential problems or hazards or special issues. And then lastly, you wrap up with a conclusion. You don't always need these, especially if it's a short instruction document. On pages 285 to 294, the book presents a complete set of instructions on how to set up a printer. Check out these instructions. You'll note how much room they take up in the book. This is because good instructions may be long. In order to both incorporate all the necessary information as well as format the document effectively with white space and visuals, it might take a lot of space. Lastly, I want to look at a set of good instructions. You'll see instructions for how to make orange chicken. I use this website for a fair amount because each of the recipes come in two forms, an expanded form that takes up most of the page, and then a nice printable recipe at the bottom. If you scroll down, you'll see the printable recipe on the left that you can click, and then you'll see the longer expanded version, on the right, and then the expanded version on the left. If you need details on specific parts of the recipe, you can see it as the blog goes down. If you just want to see the quick version of how to make the food, then you can just go all the way down to the bottom to the printable. You'll have two tasks for this lesson that spans 2 different weeks. For this week, I'm going to ask you to do a forum discussion about instructions. In your group, you need to find an example of good instructions and an example of bad instructions. Any of the group members can find and post these. Then discuss the instructions. What makes the good one good and the bad one bad? Secondly, for week 2, you'll need to write a set of instructions. This is individual, not in a group. You can pick up from the list of instructions on page 299, example 5, pick one of those from the list, and write an instruction document that explains how to do one of those things. The document will be due on Friday, March 11th. A word about your assignment. You'll probably have to look up information on how to do what you're writing about. Make sure, this is important, you do not copy and paste information from a website and you cite the sources you use to find the information. The possibility for plagiarism is pretty big here, and I want to make sure everyone stays on the ethical side of the writing. That's it for instructions. Thanks for listening, and these are the citations for this